From the heart of Maine, this is the DuView Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the DuView Podcast. I am your host, Du, a.k.a. Ryan Dumont, and just wanted to kick off this week's podcast thanking everyone for tuning in. As you know, the first of anything can be the most difficult, and so I just appreciate everyone who is tuning in, watching, listening, whatever that may be, either over on our YouTube channel, the DuView Podcast, or on any of the podcast platforms that you may listen to. So just from the bottom of my heart, thank you for tuning in for the first episode. It really does mean a lot. So before we kick off the podcast today, Mother's Day was this past Sunday, so I just want to take a quick opportunity not only to thank the first-time viewers, but also all the mothers out there. This has been a difficult, year and some change, and so, just give a special thanks to your mom or a special, mother that you know in your life, friend's mother, whatever that may be. Just make sure you take a second to thank your mom or another mom somewhere out there. So getting into it, welcome to the DuView Podcast first and foremost, guys. All right. Thank you for tuning in. So I had always planned to start some type of a podcast. And just to give a little bit of background on myself, I am a long-time born and raised Mainer. Maine is my home. I love this state. Spent a little bit of time outside of Maine in New Hampshire, and I've also, done some traveling to other various places, but Maine is home. It's always been home, and I've always come back, and it's always been there for me. And so, there's definitely some, thankful vibes there for the state of Maine, for just a beautiful place, great people for the most part, and just, an all-around great place to raise a family and to have a home. So, lifelong Mainer, born and raised, spent some time, went to school in New Hampshire, lived in New Hampshire for a year doing some work down there. But like I said, Maine is home. Maine is the spot where I've spent the majority of my time. So that being said, I wanted to start this podcast to highlight Mainers, to highlight unique and cool people in the community, cool locations, because there's a lot of people and places out there that have just never had their story told and frankly deserve to have their story told. The three, main ideas behind the podcast were adventures, music, and general shenanigans. And I'll get into those in just another couple minutes, specifics of all those. But, I wanted to start this podcast to not only tell some stories, share some conversations, but also just to have like these conversations and these people documented. Because as I said, there are a lot of unique and awesome, cool, down to earth, fantastic people, fantastic places that are never going to get shared. With our advances in technology, mobile podcasting, podcasting in general, it's pretty unique and pretty cool that I can just set up, go, show some information, show a place, show something, and, just kind of run with it. So now we're going to get just into some more specifics. So as I said, the three main ideas behind the podcast when I had, come up with the idea were adventures, music, and general shenanigans. And so when I was first thinking about things, this started way back before COVID. I know it feels like a million years ago now, but its inception did come about prior to the COVID pandemic. So with that being said, I wanted to, as I said, start documenting, sharing the stories of these people. But, the main three categories, as I said, adventures, music, and general shenanigans. And when I say adventures, I'm talking about any type of travel, hikes, trips to unique locations, anything like that. And like I said, I had done some traveling. I've been to Europe a few times. I've been down to Cuba before, and a few other places here and there, and also many locations across the United States as well. So I just wanted to share stories from those trips, stories from hikes, stories from wherever that may be. And so there will be a solo podcast here and there dedicated to an adventure here or a trip. I have an awesome GoPro camera. Shout out to GoPro. Thank you. The newest camera, the Hero 9, and it, I've taken it around, used it to document trips and adventures, and it's fantastic. A lot of that content will be shared both on our YouTube channel as well as on the Instagram page, which you can find at DuView207 if you use Instagram. So with that being said, like I said, one of the main first idea was adventures. And so in terms of, my solo stuff, the solo content you'll see on Instagram or on YouTube, it's going to be, circled around that being first and foremost. However, most of the podcasts will not be solo podcasts going forward. I know that, it's interesting to hear from just the host from time to time, but the true majority of the content on the channel will be seen or heard from, rather, by guests, right? And so I'm going to have a various array of guests on the podcast, ranging from friends of mine who are just unique and cool people to small business owners, restaurateurs, musicians, health experts, sleep experts, conservationists, experts in the field of, various topics. All right. So there's going to be a lot of cool and unique people joining me as guests in the studio, either in person, trying to keep, anybody who comes in person vaccinated or at least tested. Because again, we are still in the middle of a pandemic. So just trying to be, careful with that. I am fully vaccinated. So has given me more the recent freedoms to, start having guests over. And again, it's one-on-one. It's not like we're having a mass gathering here. But the fact of the matter is there will be guests on the podcast in a wide array of topics and areas. And, we're just going to run with it and see what happens. All right. And hopefully folks take the interest into some of these people and explore some of these unique locations that are either in your backyard or you may have to take a trip to find, right? As I said, the state of Maine is a cool, fantastic, and unique place in its own right, and it's so beautiful. And there are a lot of hardworking folks that deserve to have their stories shared, or the restaurant, or the album that they created, or the art that they've painted, anything like that. They deserve to have that shared, and that kind of goes into the next main idea of the podcast. Regardless if I have guests or not, is music. And so music, just to take a quick sidebar, is played a huge role in my life. I would not be where I am today just without the simple, concept of, harmonies, melodies, and rhythms, right? I mean, I know so many of us, just turn on Spotify, turn on the radio, and we really don't think too much about it. But, there are a lot of unique musicians and cool musicians and hardworking musicians that just either won't see the light of day or, might not be known on a big scale. And so I just want to take the opportunity with this podcast to give those people a stage and maybe even a voice. Basically the main concept being, share the stage with musicians that you should know, but you just haven't yet heard about. And so that's the cool and unique thing about a podcast setup here that I'm going to be rather running. Just giving these unique and cool musicians from an array of genres. It's going to be anything from rock and roll to jazz. Again, these are just local people who are extremely, extremely, extremely talented, and have put out extremely unique and awesome work. But again, they're not signed to Interscope Records or a major record label, so you may never hear about them. And so we'll hear their perspectives, the struggles of being a local talent, especially now during the pandemic, right? A lot of our stages and venues are closed, right? A lot of those of us who are in Maine, the State Theater, is one big one I can think of, or Blue. There's a jazz club in Portland, Maine. Just fantastic places that have had a rough go of things due to just the climate and the setting and what's been going on. So, just keep it in the back of your mind, folks. I know that we enjoy the music from these people and we enjoy their craft, but also we need to support them. So, if you can buy an album, buy a ticket, tickets, and shows become more available, buy a CD, Bandcamp, whatever it is. Just try to give these, these musicians a little bit of a leg up here. And also the venues, too. Keep them in mind, too, as we continue to reopen more and just, some of these favorite places where we've made memories. I know countless people, even made, some of the best memories of their lives at concerts, right? Or at, live music venues or whatever that may be. So just keep those folks in mind as we transition away from the pandemic and back to some semblance of normalcy. So that is the music piece. Again, I will, as I said, will be joined by guests. And one of the first few guests here will be a musician, which I will not reveal just yet. I got to keep some type of secrecy and surprise to keep people coming back. So as long as you continue to follow, again, there's going to be a lot of cool guests, specifically a lot of cool musicians here coming up as well. So going to the last and third sticking point here are general shenanigans, or the next big theme, really. And when I'm talking about general shenanigans, I'm talking about anything outdoors with the boys. And by the boys, I mean my friends, at least specifically my friends from back home that I went to high school with. We actually have a tag, or known as a group. We're called the Skitter Crew. And for those of you who don't know what a skidder is, it's a piece of logging equipment with massive wheels. They come in a lot of different sizes, from, larger than a refrigerator to, gargantuan size, massive. And they pick up logs, trees. But anyway, it kind of goes back to that more rural, Maine type of life, stereotypical Maine type of life. So we got dubbed the Skidder Crew back in 2013. It came out of our time. Our friend group came out of our time. We were actually, a bunch of us were in Boy Scouts together. And so that kind of started our friendships year previous. We all were kind of at, I was at a different school than the majority of the troop. And so, I started to create some friendships there, some people I'd already known before. But by the time we all got into high school, most of us were either Eagle Scouts or just about getting done with Scouts. So we were on our way out as we transitioned into high school, and basically our, time in the troop together cultivated a friendship. So when we got into high school, we, came together, and we would always be rolling together either at social events, sporting events, on a sports team, or just anywhere in the high school for events. And so eventually you start rolling with the same group. You have a lot of big personalities in the group, and so eventually you get dubbed with a title. And it was actually the name, the Skidder Crew, came about actually from a teacher, coach, and mentor that, came in contact with the group early on, at least by our sophomore year, 2012, 2013, right in there. And basically the name kind of stuck and followed us through the last couple of years of high school. We had one year we all had shirts made up, said the Skidder Crew across the top pocket with our name, and we had a big logo on the back. It was just awesome. If I can, I'll dig out the shirt and put a picture of that up on social media, or find the picture of all of us wearing our shirts from back in the day. It'll be a heck of a throwback. I don't have half as much hair as I do now, or the facial hair, pretty clean cut back in the day. So that being said, the Skidder Crew, they played a huge role in my life, some of the best friends I've ever had. And so when I say general shenanigans, it features anything that we do. Could be snowmobiling, anything outdoors, hike, a hike from time to time. I know that kind of overlaps with the adventures, but when you have that group, that crew, you got to understand, just, it's hilarious. Things happen, and we'll try to feature some of that content from time to time. If you've been watching my Instagram at all, some of the videos I've put up there, you'll see some of the folks that are a part of that. And it used to be a group of about 6 to 8 of us, but it has since expanded to over 10, 12 people. So, we joke around, we're going around, wow, that's a pretty good group of friends. Nah, we're not a group of friends, we're a gang. It's just, it's a joke that is, our parents are in on, the parents of my friends, myself included, and it's a good group of people, just down to earth, hard working folks that like to have a good time and enjoy a lot of the same things, and that's what has made our group so tight over the years. And obviously, as you get older, things change. People have been married. I've got, maybe 4 or 5 weddings to attend myself this summer. But the fact of the matter is, we've always stayed some type of consistency. It hasn't always, I'll tell you, it's been perfect and sunshine and roses the whole time, but we've always, stuck together, hung together. And so there's a lot of great stories and content that'll come from that as well. And I'll have a couple of the Skidder Crew guys on from time to time. You'll get to, at least meet them via the podcast platform. And I know that, a lot of people that I know from either college or, outside of the state of Maine, or even outside of the direct Kennebec County, Augusta area where I currently reside, may not know them. So I want to give them a little bit of a feature, but also, featuring some of my other friends that may fit into the general shenanigans category. And let me tell you, there are a few of them. All right, we've grown up a little bit as the times have changed, but that still doesn't mean we don't do something stupid from time to time. And stupid sometimes means funny. So hopefully you folks will enjoy that. So that being said, again, 3 main categories of the podcast, or kind of themes, if whatever you want to call it: adventures, music, and general shenanigans. So again, thank you for, tuning in. Just going to transition here real quick and talk about for a couple minutes the picture that I actually used, or the thumbnail for the podcast. It's a picture of me standing out, looking out into the horizon. I'm sure if you've either checked out our Facebook page, the DuView Podcast, or as I said, the Instagram page at DuView207, you've gotten to see that picture a few times, maybe some of you too many times. But the fact of the matter is, you saw it and you recognize it now, so that's a win for me. But anyway, getting back to the picture. So that picture was actually taken. I mentioned that I've done some traveling. That picture was taken in Cuba believe it or not. Back in 2017, I went down there as part of a class for school. I will definitely dive into more of those Cuba-related stories in future podcast episodes. But for today, I just wanted to share a quick, overview of the trip, and specifically when that picture was taken, because it was a really cool and unique moment, specifically for me. So hopefully you'll also get something out of this as well. However, Cuba is a very unique place, and, everybody has different thoughts and feelings. Oh, there are still a bunch of commies, but let me tell you, first and foremost, the people of Cuba, whenever I've traveled, they're some of the nicest people I've ever met. And I'm not talking about the tour guides and all those types of people that you're, forced to interact with or forced to see. I'm talking about your common, shopkeeper, or, whatever it may be. Just people on the street, friendly people, very nice people, who frankly are just kind of hurting for some more American involvement when it comes to trade. I know that the Cold War and everything like that previous has kind of left our two countries in an interesting spot. However, I think that we have moved away from that enough and grown, maybe even grown up a little bit as a country, hopefully, to get over that, because again, Cuba is a really unique place. And again, they have more of an issue down there with the U.S. government than they do with, like, you or me, the citizens of the country. They love us. They want us to come down. They want us to come down, spend money, help stimulate the economy, because, quick sidebar, the Cuban economy is really interesting. They have two types of currency. They have one type of currency for citizens of the country, and they have one type of currency for foreigners, specifically people touring on vacation, that type of stuff. So interestingly enough, to be a member of the United States, to go to Cuba, at the time, this is a couple years ago now, we've changed presidents and whatever else, but during the week, we were able to enter Cuba as part of an Obama era policy to change things, try to, phase towards some more openness in the country of Cuba. And so we were able to go actually as part of a trip in college. We took a class on the Cold War, and a trip to Cuba was part of the class. So that really, won me over easily. Just a quick shout out to my two professors that took us on that trip, Professor Mazer and Professor Pajikowski. You guys are awesome. Thank you for providing, us with that opportunity. But anyway, we go to Cuba back in 2017 during spring break, and, you leave Boston, fly out of Logan Airport down in Boston, and it's about, 30 degrees or below if you're lucky. You get down to Cuba and it's 70 plus, in the 90s, rocking around in shorts. It's a great switch up there for the winter of 2017. But anyway, getting back to the main story behind the pictures. So later in our trip, probably towards the end of the trip, we started in Havana and then slowly made our way to the Bay of Pigs and a few other significant historical locations along that route. It's literally the location where they had the Bay of Pigs invasion. And then we were making our way across the country to the city of Trinidad. We spent a night in Trinidad. There was even a cave that they had turned into like a disco or nightclub. That story will come at a later date, so please come back for that. However, the next day, post cave party, we were able to go to basically a town that grew up around an old sugar plantation. And if you know anything about the island of Cuba, is that their one major export that they will have enough of until the world ends is sugar. Arguably some of the best rum in the world. You can buy for like 6 pesos at the grocery store in Cuba. Common for them. Unattainable here for us, unless maybe you go up to Canada and buy a bottle and bring it back or something like that. But the fact of the matter is, you can't get it's called Havana Club. They have a few other types of brands down there. So if you like rum, try to get some of that Cuban rum. It is fantastic. Very smooth, very, very sweet, but very smooth, very, very, very easy to go down. Take my word for it. But anyway, we went to Cuba and made our way through the country to the town of Trinidad. And after a night in Trinidad, we began to head back towards Havana towards the end to wrap up our trip. And on our way back, we stopped at this little town village on the outskirts, and basically it was out of the remnants of what used to be a massive sugar plantation. They have had massive sugar plantations dating all the way back to when the island was founded, post, like the Columbus discovery, quote unquote, of the New World. And so the Spanish set up some of the first sugar plantations, but little known, actually, the French actually had a very strong presence in Cuba. I didn't know that until I went down there, talked with some folks, and were taken around to some of these other smaller towns outside Havana that have a lot of French architecture and fleur-de-lis and French influence. And so you could kind of tell that this area had probably passed hands from time to time, meaning the Spanish maybe had started building it, and maybe the French had, come in contact with it later on. But the fact of the matter is, it was an old, post-Renaissance, age of exploration plantation that had just been around that long. You could feel the age on the place. And I'm not talking like things were in bad condition, but, you go over to Europe, or you go over, to some of these areas where people have lived for a lot longer than in the United States. And, you can just feel the age on things. And if you've traveled, you'll know more or less what I'm talking about. But the fact of the matter is, again, old sugar plantation, there were villagers all running about. You had, an old 50s or early 60s Ford sedan, either like a Falcon or a Fairlane or a Galaxy, something like that, right next to literally a wagon cart drawn, being drawn by, a donkey, right, hauling sugarcane around. So it's almost like you went back in time and the time machine broke. But I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a really cool, unique way, because you're literally still experiencing like 1950s, 60s culture, along with, this old agricultural style that has existed for, hundreds of years. And, additionally, I have, modern cell phone technology or whatever in my pocket, to document all these things. So it's really is like the combination of times and the combination of, the years when you go down there. It's like really stepping back in a time capsule between the architecture and everything. And so part of this old sugar plantation, when they used to have slaves, unfortunately, but when they used to have slaves down there, they had these massive watchtowers that would provide a completely unobstructed, like 360 degree view of the area. And so now it's not it's partially operational, but not fully operational sugar plantation anymore. But the plantation, you can still go up into the old plantation. You can still go up into the old watchtower, and so that's where that photo was taken. I climbed to the very top of the watchtower, and it was nice. One of the other folks on the trip was nice enough to take a photo of me back to looking out into the countryside. And I mean, it's a beautiful view from the top of that tower. I mean, from what you can see, and I can also share some more photos to both the Facebook and Instagram pages of that, from that rather. But just the unique opportunity to not only be in that country, but to be up in this elevated platform to see just the countryside and the country. It's just so beautiful. I was at a loss for words. I just, stood there for a good 5+ minutes and just sat and watched everything, that was going on in the countryside, because directly below you have the villagers carrying on their lives, which they've probably done from the time of Fidel Castro, to now, right? And so they've, continued to labor and work and toil, whatever, in the same conditions, more or less, for the last, at least 50, 60, probably close to 100 years, depending on the age of some of the folks, right? So it's just, and then you look out further and you see some of the, the roads and some of the more modern infrastructure, which frankly, Cuban infrastructure is pretty terrible. You can go into some potholes with your bus or car and never come out on the other side. You'll just get stuck in there. I'm not even joking. We hit one on the highway and I think I fell out of my seat. But the fact of the matter is, right, your range of vision increases the further you go up the tower, obviously. And so eventually you look out into the Cuban mountains, right? Because the middle of the country is actually pretty mountainous. Like a lot of people assume, oh, it's a beautiful, sandy beaches and stuff like that. Cuba's really actually not known for its, sandy beaches. A lot of the beaches are much more rocky, similar, not quite how we have rocky beaches in Maine, but it's just like, it's an island that's made out of almost kind of like a piece of rock or cliff. And I'm sure the rock experts there, the geographers and such are probably screaming at me right now for not knowing the technical term. But fact of the matter is, all right, it's not these big sandy beaches. A lot of the sandy beaches had to be created, sand had to be brought in, and a lot of that came about during the the Soviet era, when you'd have a lot of Soviet officials coming to Cuba for vacation, whatever that may be, when you had a lot of Soviet-Cuban trade influence, etc. During the Cold War, obviously. But you can see all the different time periods, when you're traveling around Cuba, or even as I was talking about, just going up this tower, because eventually you get to the top and you're looking out at the same, mountains that Fidel Castro and Che Guevara and all these people that you read about in the history books, were using guerrilla warfare, to take over the country from Batista. And it's just, you can just feel the culmination of history. Like I said, it's almost like the time machine got broken and it got stuck. You want to hit it a couple times to make sure that it's still working, but it's so cool, and you realize actually, in fact, it is working. It's just this unique place is not, I don't like to use the word trapped, but this unique place has been, you know, kind of isolated, to the sense that it's almost like a time capsule going right back in time. So that was a unique opportunity, and I believe one of the only reasons we were allowed in the country is because we were an educational tour. It wasn't like it was me and the rest of the Dumont family on vacation. We had a reason to be there. We were trying to learn, and we actually even had to take some courses or like little seminar talks at the university or through the University of Havana. So we got to hear from some of the best and brightest of Cuban experts in terms of philosophy and economics. And I will say the most interesting seminar that we sat through was the economics seminar. Basically kind of got back to when I was talking about Cuba in the beginning. This story is that, they really need just the simple U.S. trading from anything from like, Dove bar soap to literally blue jeans. Like there are some situations you can go down to Cuba and you can trade with people. They have, say, a bottle of rum or, some artisan work or wood carving or painting that you like. I mean, you can literally trade them for a bar of soap or some blue jeans or stuff like that. I mean, it's amazing because it's almost going back to the old idea of like bartering, right? So again, continues to add to this concept of, it's almost like stepping back in time in the time capsule. So if you're given the opportunity to get down to Cuba, highly recommend it for everybody. Like I said, the people are super friendly. Streets are really safe. At night, I know some people like you have to, like when you go to Europe, right, you got to worry about like a lot of gypsy people or street folk, pickpocketing or anything like that. I mean, obviously you're mindful when you travel, but didn't really have to worry about that in Cuba, which made it really awesome, really unique to not have to be on the lookout all the time. Obviously, there is safety and mindfulness. Always be, safe when you travel. Always check out the place, do some research. Don't just show up because it's, you don't want to show up into, a country in the middle of strife or starvation or, conflict or whatever. Just try to be as safe as possible when you travel. But anyway, like I said, Cuba, awesome, unique experience. And again, just to give you the story behind the picture, right? Again, going up to that old, watchtower and just having that unobstructed 360 degree view of, mountains, fields, and just everyday life unfolding, which was absolutely fantastic. So that is just about going to wrap us up for today, guys. Thank you for tuning in to the DuView podcast here. We will be back with our next episode on May 25th. We're going to be releasing episodes on a bi-weekly basis, so that looks at about, obviously, 2 episodes a month, rather. Not a week, a month, bi-weekly. 2 a month. So you can expect to see episode 1, obviously, here today on the 11th. And if we look to the future, like I said, episode 2 with our first guest will be dropping on the 25th of May. And then looking into June, we will have episode number 3 on the 8th and episode number 4 on the 22nd of June. So upcoming episodes, as I said, May 25th, June 8th, and June 22nd. And from this point forward, I will be joined by guests in the studio. Really excited for next week to get our first guest on here. I'm sure everyone will enjoy hearing some stories from this gentleman. So, but stay tuned. I'll be dropping the guest the day before the podcast. So tune in the 24th to find out who that's going to be. And then please come back for the recording or the podcast, rather, on the 25th. It will not be one you want to miss. But before I go, just want to keep you guys caught up on our social media. So a lot of the posting I do is on Instagram at DuView207. There's also our Facebook page, the DuView Podcast, and the YouTube page, which will have the video from the podcast, which is just the DuView Podcast on YouTube. If you go to any of our pages, all the links to all the social media, YouTube, and podcast host formats will all be there, so you can find everything if you check us out there. And so with that being said, guys, thank you for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. We'll catch you back here on the 25th with our first guest. And with that, thank you for tuning in to the first episode of the DuView Podcast.